Good afternoon, everybody. So today for the class, so we will do three things. First, we chant the first chapter, which is the first Bhumi. Then second, so we will do the short revision. The third, we start new kind of lessons with the pure and great motivation. We all together chant the root text, the first chapter about the first Bhumi. So we all chant together slowly and try to understand the meaning. I pay homage to the General Lord Manjushri. Sarvakas and middle-level Buddhas arise from Surgeon sages. Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas. The compassionate mind and the non-dual cognition, as well the awakening mind, these are causes for bodhisattva. As compassion alone is the accepted to be the seeds of the perfect harvest of the Buddhahood, the water that nourishes it, and the fruit that is long a source of enjoyment. I will praise compassion at the start of all. First with the thought, I am. They cling on ourselves. Then with the thoughts, mine. They become attached to the things. Like buckets on the water wheel, they turn without control. I bow to the compassion that cares for such a suffering beings. Beings are like reflection of the moon in repelling water, seeing them as fleeting and as a devote of intrinsic nature. The Bodhisattva's mind falls under compassion's way, yearning to set free every transmigrating being. Through intense dedication with Samantha Batra's prayers, he abides in the perfect joy. This is called the first ground. From the point on, having attained this ground, he is held by the name Bodhisattva alone. He is born into lineage of the Tathagatas as well. He has utterly approached the three bonding factors, such as Bodhisattva upholds the state of supreme joy. It has the power to shake 100 walls. Stepping on from one ground to another, it travels perfectly to the higher ones. At the point, the path to all lower realms are blocked for him. At the point, all the groans of the ordinary person cease for him. He is described clearly in terms akin to the eighth area. Even when abiding on the first ground of the mind for full awakening is a process those born from the sage's speech and the Pratika Buddha. Through the power of his merit, and his merit increase evermore. When the gone affair, he will also suppresses them by his intelligence. At this point, the first causes for full awakening, the perfection of generosity will become permanent, committed to giving away even his very flesh. Giving become a sign to infer his unseen qualities. All living being eagerly yearning for happiness. Yet, for human, there's no happiness without resources. Material resources, in turn, come about from generosity. Knowing this, the Buddha spoke on generosity first. Those with weak compassion and ruthless minds who seek their own welfare with enthusiasm, even for them, the well they desire will come from generosity, a cause that relieves suffering. Indeed, it is through the practice of generosity that he will swiftly, at one point, meet the Aryas. He will then clean the continuum of cyclic existence, and as a result, he will journey to the state of peace. Those who keep in mind their pledge to help sentient beings without much delay attain joy through their generosity. Since is for both compassion and the one who is not, the discourse on generosity is primary. If simply hearing or thinking of praise giving me, being such a joy to the children of the conqueror, joy not experienced even by the arhats who enter into peace. What need is there to speak of joy when giving away everything? Cutting his body and giving it away, he sees from his own pain, the pain of others, such as the birth in the hell, as if he were undergoing this situation himself. Thus, swiftly he strove to cut away all their pain. Generosity, devoid of the gift, receiver, and giver, is called a supermundane perfection. But when attachment for these three arises, it is then said to be the mundane perfection, abiding perfectly in the Bodhisattva's mind and endowed with the light, beautifying the sublime one. This ground of perfect joy is the water crystal gem, which dispels all darkness and remains victorious. This is from the entering the middle way, the first ground of generating the mind. So thank you so much. We all together chanting the root text. Second, we do the short revision about what we learned in the past. At the beginning, there are 4 parts. The meaning of the title, entering the middle way, the meaning of the title, The second, the translator's homage. Number three, the meaning of the treatise itself. Number four, the concluding the matter. Therefore, at the beginning, there are the four parts. First, the meaning of the title, which is entering the middle way, right? So this root text, entering middle way. Therefore, we need to know, according to, related to this sentence, what is the middle way? Here, the middle way refer to the wisdom treatise, Mule Madhyamaka Karika, composed by Nagarjuna. That means the root text entering into the Mule Madhyamaka Karika treatise. Simply, through studying this root text, so we're going to understand the perfect the meaning of the Mula Madhyamaka Karika. Then there are two ways to enter into the middle way treatise. One, from the perspective of profound. Second, from the perspective of the vast. What does mean how the root text enter into the middle way treatise, which is the Mule Madhyamaka Karika, that root text. What does mean, from the perspective of the profound way to enter into the root text? Then there's a very simple, sentence from the commentary of Chandrakirti. He said, this tradition is unique. Mean the Nagarjuna tradition, which is explained in the Mule Madhyamaka Karika, the middle way treatise. So the Nagarjuna's tradition is very unique. Mean the meaning of emptiness is very unique in Nagarjuna tradition. So here we can think same, the Nagarjuna tradition, the consequences, the school tradition is the same thing. Unique means the meaning of emptiness, we cannot explain, we cannot define according to from the consequences school. We cannot explain the meaning of emptiness according to the Chitta Mantra school. So therefore, through the root text written by Chandrakirti, then we're going to know the exact, the 100% the meaning of emptiness according to Nagarjuna tradition. This means this is, one way, one reason how the root text entering into the middle way treatise. Then second, the middle way treatise, the Mule Madhyamaka Karika, mainly explain, teach the emptiness, mostly, explain the emptiness, not much about, the 6 perfections, bodhicitta, 3 ordinary paths, not much. All of them clearly explained in the root text, which is written by Nagarjuna, entering into the middle way text. For example, when you read the Mule Madhyamaka Karika, you can see a lot of logics and reasoning to introduce emptiness. Not much the 10 bhumis, not much about like a great compassion, bodhicitta, so and so. Therefore, through the entry into middle way text, that we will know the hidden, the meaning of the vast practices, include the 10 bhumis, particularly the order of between 6 and 7 bhumi. That means entering into middle way. The middle way here referred to the Madhyamaka, Mule Madhyamaka Karika treatise. The second, the homage of the, here is the translator homage, right? Then the Tibetan translator make a homage to Manjushri, that the General Lord Manjushri, in order to complete the translation. Then number 3, the meaning of the treatise itself. Then next, Lama Tsongkhapa explained the actual, meaning of these teachings. Then the third, as a 4 parts. The meaning of the treatise itself as a 4 parts. The first, the salutation. Then second, the number 2, the actual body of the treatise. Then number 3, the manner in which the treatise were composed. Then number 4, the dedication or dedicating the merit of having composed the treatise. So the actual body starts with the 4 outline or 4 parts. First, salutation, to complete the composing the text. The second is the actual body of the treatise. Third, the manner in which the treatise was composed. That means how Chandrakirti composed this text. Mean based on receiving all the instruction from Nagarjuna. At the same time, he studied for a long time about the Parajana Paramita teaching. Then he composed the text, the root text, based on having instruction from Nagarjuna. Then dedicating. At the end, he did such as great dedication to explore the Nagarjuna tradition into 10 directions. The last, number 4 is the dedication, right? Then salutation. Salutation So before he composed this text, he, sincerely, he make a salutation, not to the Buddha, not to the Bodhisattvas, not to the, Arhat. He made salutation to the compassion, right? So he really preached to the compassion. Then there's a just I think 4 or 2 paragraph, just make a salutation to compassion. Then salutation to compassion without differentiating. Then with the differentiating. Therefore, this twofold salutation, the meaning of entering into taking or composing the treatise these are twofold. Praising great compassion without differentiating. Paying homage to great compassion by differentiating its characteristics. Then simply, we just first line, Sarvakas and middle level Buddha arise from civilian sages. The Charvakas, the middle level Buddhas arise from Buddha. All the Hinayan practitioners who are Arhat, they are actually born or arise from Buddha, they became Arhat. They realize emptiness. They generate renunciation based on listening Buddha teaching. Therefore, they are arise from sages. Then the second line, Buddhas are born from Bodhisattva. Right? That means the Buddha, all the Buddhas, without exception, all the Buddhas actually arise, produce, born from Bodhisattva. All the Buddhas, before he or she became a Buddha, they used to be Bodhisattva. First become Bodhisattva, the second become, a Bodhisattva Arhat, and third, they become Buddha. Therefore, we must think, I want to be a Buddha. Therefore, first, I have to be Bodhisattva, right? Bodhisattva. Then, how I can be Bodhisattva? Therefore, the third line, the compassionate mind and non-dual cognition, as well the awakening mind, these are causes for Bodhisattva, right? So now it's really showing from beginning of the Mahayan path to, kind of ending of the Mahayan path. From beginning with the great compassion, between we become Bodhisattva, the last we will become Buddha, right? Then, what does mean Charvaka? What does mean Pratya Buddha? So Charvaka is Sanskrit words. And the middle level Buddha is, like a Pratya Buddha. That translates as a middle level Buddha. Charvaka translate into English, hearer, mean, hear the Mahayan teaching. They attend Mahayan teaching, then they taught the Mahayan teaching to others, but they themselves, they don't practice Mahayan path. That means they just hear the Mahayan teaching and pass to other, don't practice themselves the Mahayan path. Therefore, their name, Charvaka or hearer. Clear? Because the practitioner who practice the Hinayana path, there are two categories. Can be hearer, can be the middle level Buddha, Pratika Buddha. The second, what does mean Pratika Buddha? Middle level Buddha. Pratika means middle. When we say middle, then there must be three, above and below. We say, the middle means someone must be above you, someone must be below you. That means the Pratika Buddha, they say the middle. Mean compared with Buddha, compared with actual, the Buddha, he or she is much lower. Compared with hearer, he or she is much superior. Therefore, middle. Why? The Pratika Buddha is, much lower than Buddha. Because Buddha fully be enlightened being. Buddha fully eliminate all kinds of, obscuration. The middle Buddha haven't eliminated all kinds of obscuration, haven't achieved, complete, all the good qualities. Therefore, compared with Buddha, the Pratika Buddha is lower. Compared with Charvaka, compared with hearer, he is much superior. Because the Pratika, Buddha accumulate merit for 100 eons. Therefore, they go middle. Then, why Chandrakirti, preach to compassion, not Buddha, not Bodhisattvas, not Arhat. Why he, particularly preach or make a salutation to compassion in order to complete, the composing the text. Why? Then the next sentence here. Sentence number 2. As compassion alone is the accepted to be the seeds of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood. So then he thought, actually, the compassion is the most important. Whoever wish to be Buddha, first you need to cultivate great compassion as a seeds. But in order to realize for us, he was saying, if you want to be Buddha, as a foundation, you cultivate compassion, right? Therefore, for him, he thought compassion is the most important as a seed, very important as a water, as a important as a fruit, right? So, for example, you are very hungry, you are looking at fruits, you want to get a fruit. The fruit can be, achieved if there's a kind of tree nourished by water. There will be a tree if there's a seeds, which is produce the tree, right? Seeds, then the water nurtures the tree, then the tree can produce a lot of fruits. Therefore, Buddhahood, achieving Buddhahood is look like fruit, fulfill people hungry. Then the tree is look like the Bodhisattva path. Then the seeds is look like the great compassion is look like actual seeds of the Bodhisattva path. Therefore, he was telling the reason, as compassion alone is accepted to be the seeds of perfect, they say perfect, harvest of the Buddhahood. Then again, the compassion is look like water that nurtures the harvest. And the fruit that is long sources of enjoyment. Therefore, right, I will praise compassion at the start of all. If we ask to the Chandrakirti, why did you praise to compassion, not Buddha, not Bodhisattva? Why? He will say, compassion is very important at the beginning as a seed, very important in the middle as a water, very important at the end as a fruit. Therefore, I prefer to make a praise to compassion, right? But directly, he prays to compassion, which is most important cause to achieve Buddhahood. Mean indirectly, he prays to Buddha and Bodhisattva because he prays to the compassion. Remember? So this is a, praise to compassion is general. The second, remember, three, principle is the cause to be Bodhisattva. First, compassion, right? Second, the non-dual cognition. That means the third stanza, first with the thought, I am. They cling to a self. Then with the thought, mind, they became attached to the thing. Like buckets on the water wheel, they turn without controlling. I bow to the compassion that care for such a suffering beings. So this stanza prays to compassion without differentiating, right? So this stanza, I think also, if you cannot memorize all the, the root text, please memorize this number 3, stanza number 3. First with the thought, I am. They cling to ourselves, right? The last time also I asked, we must have experience how we cling to the self. For example, everybody have a thought, oh, I'm a man, I am a woman, I am a teacher, I am eating. Right? Every morning we have a thought. The thought focus to I, right? I want to go. There's a thought. The thoughts focus on I want to go. But for us, actually we have an I. But problem is, for us the problem, we cannot recognize actual I. For us, I mean is very independent I. Mean self or independent is synonymous. When we think, I want to go, there's a thought, there's a mind. The mind focus, or absorb on I. For us, the I is very independent I. The I is very self, mean not depend on anything, very independent I, right? Therefore, according to the Hindu, any Hindu, traditions, all the Hindu people, according to Hindu tradition, they believe into permanent I, singleness I, right? I, independent I. Also, when you study a little bit about like Judaism or Christianity, Islam, they also believe in a permanent, like a soul. Mean there's a kind of mind or maybe I, which is independent. This is, the wrong concept about I. Therefore, we must think I am exist, but I'm only exist depending on my 5 aggregates. Without, or 5 aggregates, I cannot be exist. Based on the 5 aggregates, we establish as a I, or him or her. So we try to recognize I merely designated based on 5 aggregates. But we have a problem because we believe I is just self-independent. Then second, when we think this is my body, this is my house, then also we, cling everything around us as an independent phenomena. This also wrong perception. Due to this true misperception about I and mind not refer to the things which belongs to you. Make sure, when you hear say mind mean mind not refer to the things which belong to you. Mind here referred to the I, which is possessed thing. For example, this is my hand. This is my hand. That time there's an I. The I, possess the hand. And for us, the I, which is possess the hand, is independent for us. Due to this true misperception, that we attach with everything as an independent. This is the root of the samsara. Therefore, we are in samsara. We are in cyclic existence, cycle, up to down. Then there's like the buckets on the water wheel. They turn without control. Right? Therefore, first, you must remember the 6, analogies about the water buckets. Right? The water wheel has many buckets. All the buckets strongly tied with the wheel, with a very strong rope. Remember, all the buckets strongly tied with the wheel, with a strong rope, rope. So we stony bound in samsara with the stone karma and afflictions. Therefore, not easy to free from samsara. Right? Then the water will, has a what you call operator who operates the wheel, push down, pull up, pulling down, like push, pull. There's an operator. Without operator, the water cannot move, cannot turn around. There's an operator. So we are in samsara. For us, the untamed, undisciplined mind is the operator. They operate us to go through the samsara, millions of years operator. Right? Then the water will go down very easy. Coming up, very difficult. We need a lot of effort. Therefore, born in a lower realms, very easy. Getting out from the lower realms, go to a higher realm is very difficult. Then you remember, the analogy. From lower realm to lower realm, higher to lower realm, it look like the dust on the earth. Many, cannot count. Then from lower to higher realms, higher to higher realm, it look like dust on the finger palm of the Buddha. Is very little, very rare. Right? So remember the sixth analogy with the water, water wheel, and generate strong kind of renunciation. I want to free from samsara. Therefore, I need to eliminate the karma, affect emotion. In order to do it, I need to tend my mind. I need to make a proper discipline for my mind. So first you generate, renunciation, upon you. Then you have a renunciation. Then when you just think about other, then certainly, definitely, we can have a compassion. Compassion. Remember, then without having any kind of impact, when you think about the water buckets, water wheel, then you actually, Lama Tsongkhapa said, there's no way you can generate compassion for others. Then there's three kinds of actually compassion can generate what without any differentiation, just focus on the suffering beings, generate compassion. Second, realizing all sentient beings as impermanent, charactered by impermanent, and generate compassion. Third, realize all sentient beings, devoid from intense existence, and generate compassion. Therefore, the sentence is here, I bow the compassion that cares for such as suffering beings. Beings are like a reflection on a moon in repelling water. Right? You just imagine, you just look at the water, the moon reflection on the repelling water. You can see, the reflection on the moon is just such as moving. Every moment is moving, is shaking, moving. That means all sentient beings, every moment by moment, is going to die, born again, which is like samsara. We don't realize. Number one. Number two, we just imagine you're looking, the reflection on the moon in the water, just in the water. clear water. When you look at the reflection of the moon in the water, how the moon, reflection of the moon appear in the water. Because the water is very clean, right? There's no any other obstacle. Therefore, the moon reflection just appears in the water. That means the reflection in the water come with the two things. One from the moon, then there's a water. Without water, there's no reflection of the moon in the water. It's a dependent origination, right? So realize the dependent origination. Try to understand all phenomena are empty or devoid of intense existence. The Bodhisattva's mind falls under compassion's sway, yearning to sit free every transmigrating being. Right? Then 1.5 is actual explain the first Bhumi. So before we start the first Bhumi, also we need to study a few things. Also we roughly study in the last class. So we start from there. So I will do very quick kind of revision. The actual ground, first the actual body of the treatise has two parts. Actual body of the treatise has two parts. What are they? The causal grounds and the resultant grounds. That means from first Bhumi to 10th Bhumi. Then above the 10 is the resultant, or Buddha's Bhumi. Then with the first, there are three. How to practice the path according to this system in general. Practicing on the ordinary person's stage in particular. Presenting the ground of the Arya's Bodhisattva. Right? First, we need to know how to practice the path. That means always you must think there's a few Buddhist tradition how to practice the path. According to Mahayana tradition, how to practice the path according to Chitta Mantra school. How to practice the path according to autonomous school. How to practice the path according to the Pasangika school. How to practice the path according to the first two schools, right? There's many different ways, how to practice the path. For example, Lama Selingpa, right? He was very high practitioner. He was actually Bodhisattva, but he followed the Chitta Mantra school. The Adisha is the student of Lama, Venerable Selingpa. But his view, he followed the middle way school. Particularly, he followed Nagarjuna school. Right? Therefore, as a Buddhist, you have a free option. You have a many options to freely choose. You can just simply follow the first two schools, practice the path. You can follow Chitta Mantra school, practice the Mahayana path. You can follow the consequences, the autonomous school, practice the path. And you can follow the Pasangika school, practice the path. Now, Lama Tsongkhapa very much focus for us how to practice the path according to this system, mean according to Pasangika or according to Nagarjuna. Right? This is number one. Then practicing the ordinary person stages, which is great compassion, bodhicitta, non-dual cognitions. How to practice the path according to this system in general? If in this treatise, the profound and the vast path of the Bodhisattva are established by following Nagarjuna, the question arises as to what kind of stage of the path leading to Buddhahood, right? So Nagarjuna explained the profound, the vast path. So what kind of really, path we must practice according to Pasangika, according to Nagarjuna? What kind of? Then why we need to know, according to, why we need to know the Nagarjuna tradition? That means simply, I can say, also you can think, oh, there's so many, kind of different path I can practice. That means the final or the perfect path is the path which is taught by Nagarjuna based on the Prajana Paramita. That means Buddha taught 3 wheels of Dharma, first, second, third. Nagarjuna mainly follows the second wheel of Dharma. Mean, I want to follow Nagarjuna. The path is perfect, final and fine one. Right? Therefore, I want to know, I want to know the Nagarjuna tradition. The purpose of establishing the system of the second Buddha Nagarjuna and so on by means of the study and critical reflection is to ensure that we find the deep conviction in the methods of the practicing perfect path, so that we cannot be led astray by the deceit, false, and the path. Right? So you want to say, oh, I want to study the Chandrakirti text, Nagarjuna text. I want to ensure, my path is a perfect. None of the other kind of, practice can deceive me, cannot deceive my practice. Therefore, I want to practice the Nagarjuna treatise. Then also, the next, although Nagarjuna explains partial aspect of the path in numerous texts. Therefore, Nagarjuna, I think, composed more than 100, treatises, more than 100 treatises. Some is very extensive and medium size, very small, maybe more than 100. So which, text we must follow. Therefore, although Nagarjuna explained partial aspect of the path in numerous texts, 3 treatises present the overall body of the path. Right? The 3 treatises actually, present the Mahayana path perfectly overall. So what are the 3 treatises which is present the overall body of the path, both profound and vast aspect? I will ask you, I'm asking which, three treatises present the overall body of the path, both the profound and the vast aspect. What are the three treatises? Number one, the precious garland. Number two, preach to the ultimate extent. Then number three, the compendium of the sutra. The compendium of the sutra. These three texts overall, Nagarjuna present the Mahayana path, profound, vast aspect both. So we need to know the Mahayana path based on these three treatises, which is precious garland, preach to the ultimate extent. Number three, the compendium of the sutra. Right, three. Next, we need to know then how the precious garland explain, the actual body of the path. Then present the path this such as first the said, the roots of this are awakening mind. The root of this are unawakening mind. That means all the bodhisattva deeds, all the bodhisattvas practices, the root is bodhicitta. Remember, I said, the roots of these are unawakening mind. Then, preceded by compassion. That means Buddha, achieving Buddha, depend on practicing six perfections. Practicing six perfections, the root is bodhicitta. And in order to practice bodhicitta, compassion is the preceded mean pre-practice. Now in our mind we have to be very clear, right? We have to be very clear. I want to follow Nagarjuna tradition. I want to follow the Pasangika tradition in order to achieve Buddhahood. So what is the actual path I must follow? First, you need to cultivate great compassion. Then bodhicitta can be achieved. Based on achieving great compassion, bodhicitta, then you can practice six perfections. Then we can be Buddha. Very simple, right? First, great compassion. Second, bodhicitta. Based on bodhicitta, then practice six perfection, particularly the wisdom perfection. It's very clear. Now we need to know what are the six perfection. What is the benefit of practicing the six perfection? Oh, time is moving so fast. Okay. So if you have the copy of the Illuminating the Intent, page number 60. If you don't have, you just listen. I try to read sentence by sentence. First, identifying the six perfection. Here, to present in brief the qualities of the bodhisattvas. They are generosity, morality, forbearance, diligence, meditative absorption, wisdom, compassion, and so on. What are the 6 perfections? I think everybody know the number. Then what is the benefit of practicing 6 perfection? Then there are, each of the perfection has 2 benefits. One is, present moment benefit. One is benefit for next life, or benefit for, benefit later. What is the, present moment? What is the right kind of benefit I can have if I practice the 6 perfection? Then generosity is, utter giving up a self-interest. Self-interest. If your mind tend for generosity, then slowly your stingy, self-centered attitude going to reduce. Finally, giving up the self-interest. Mean you don't have any self-interest. For example, somebody hungry, you give a food. You just give a food with a compassion. You don't have you don't have any expectation to get something back. Return something from other. Mean just you are giving. Even though when you do recitation, you just doing recitation to only benefit others. You don't have any self-interest. You never think your own interest. Therefore, you practice, if your mind turn into generosity, at the end, you're going to give up self-interest, no self-centered attitude, no self-interest. There's no self kind of, benefits. Second, what is the immediate benefit I can have if I practice morality? Morality refers to working for other welfare. If you turn your mind with the morality, be moral, finally, you will do only benefit others. You're working for other welfares. Forbearance is to relinquish hostility. Right? Patience or forbearance is finally, eliminating the hostility. And what is the immediate benefit? Practicing diligence, increasing positive deeds. What is the immediate benefit of practicing meditative absorption? Meditative absorption is one spontaneous with no afflictions. Right? If your mind tend for meditative absorption, mean you able to focus only one single object. If your mind always focus on one chosen single object, slowly, all the afflictions going to, become very weak. Finally, it look like you don't have any negative afflictions because you fully surprised through, meditative absorption, which is focused on single object. Then, what is the benefit of practicing the wisdom? Wisdom is to establish the meaning of the truth, right? So if you turn your mind in wisdom, you will realize the truth. Truth referred to here, emptiness. Compassion is intelligence that cares. If you turn your mind in compassion, finally you only cares other because you become so compassionate being. This is the immediate benefit. important benefit of practicing six perfection include compassion. Then what is the benefit for next life or next? Generosity brings resources. So if you're generous, for the short time, your prosperity or your wealth going to decrease. For example, you have a $10, you donate $1 for the, like organization, charity, person who need it. You donate $1, you will have only $9. For the short time, you can see your wealth going to decrease. With the long term, increase or bring resources. Morality, happiness. If you practice, morality, is bring a lot of happiness. In our life, so many problems we have. Problem with the friends, problem with your family, or problem with your whoever, is mainly come because untamed mind, undisciplined mind. Therefore, morality, happiness, forbearance, luster, diligence, majesty, meditative absorption, bring tranquility, and wisdom release, and all aims are realized with a compassionate heart. Very important. Any of the one practice or from the six perfection, the compassion always as a heart. For example, you have a piece of bread. You will give the piece of bread to like animal, bird, and dog or human. You don't just give it. Give with the compassion. So when you do meditation, before you do the meditation, before you meditate on something, generate compassion, do meditation. The compassion must be as a heart. Therefore, he said, for all beings, and all aims are realized with compassionate heart, right? Compassionate. Through simultaneous perfection of the seven of these, seven means six perfection plus compassion. Without exception, unattained leadership of the world is set. The sphere of the inconceivable gnosis. That means six perfection, bodhicitta, compassion, have to practice all together. All together. Next, in the future, we will learn how to practice the six perfection together, right? So this is the Nagarjuna tradition. This is the Pasangika tradition. This is the actual, Mahayana tradition. Then we just, at the end, what he's saying, Chandar Kirti, and Buddha Palita, Arya Deva, Shanti Deva, all the, Pasangika master, they are in same way, how to practice the path. There's no any differences between Chandrakirti, Nagarjuna, Arya Deva. All the Pasangika master has a same, same kind of idea how to practice the Mahayana path, right? This finished. Now we go the new kind of lesson today. Right? How to practice on the ordinary person stage in the particular. What are the ordinary, stage, ordinary path? Great compassion, non-dual cognition, and awakening mind, mean bodhicitta. These are the ordinary person stage in particular. Now here ordinary not referred to just simple being. The Mahayan practitioner who haven't reached to the Arya stage, that we call ordinary being. Even though Bodhisattva who achieve the first path, second path, we consider they are still ordinary. When they reach to the seeing path, then they become an extraordinary being, arhat. Ordinary being means before the arhat state, ordinary being. Then there's a question, right? Exactly, you can see here in the rest of the root text. After the salutation, then Chandrakirti directly go to the arhat stage. In between, he didn't explain the ordinary, path. Right? Look at, I will praise compassion at the start of all. First with the thought, no, next one. I'm sorry. Oh yeah. Yearning to the sit free every transmigrating being. Then is finished the salutation. After the salutation, he just start that actual text with the first bhumi. In between, he didn't explain the ordinary path, three path. Therefore, there's a question. If this state is present, the system systematically, both the profound and vast aspect of the Bodhisattva path as well as their resultant, which constitute the object of attainment. Then the stage of the path of the ordinary person, which are so important for the Bodhisattva, should have been presented immediately after the salutation. But this is not the case. Instead, the text begins directly with the presentation of the ground of the Arya being. How could this be right? Right? Say, okay, Chandrakirti explained the profound was include the Arhat or in the resultant stage. How come he didn't explain the ordinary, ordinary person practice after the salutation, before the arhat? He must explain in between. He didn't explain because he just go directly to the arhat. They say, this is, how could this be right? Clear? The question is clear. How come actually Chandrakirti must present the ordinary person stage before explain the arhat stage? But this is not the case, because this takes directly with the presentation of the ground of the Arya beings. How could this be right? Then the reply, the stage of the path of the ordinary person were actually presented already in the context of the salutation verses. So it is not explained at this point here. By presenting the three principal causes, compassion, awakening mind, non-dual awareness, on the basis of the practicing which has become the Bodhisattva, it was shown that those who wish to enter the great vehicle must first cultivate the three factors. Not only must these three for the practice at the outset, they must also be practiced even after one has been Bodhisattva. Then the answer is very simple. the three ordinary being, in ordinary, the ordinary being, right? Ordinary person practice, not explain between the salutation and the arya in between, but he already explained, presented during the, during the salutation, the verses. No need to explain separately. Because in order to be bodhisattva, these three practices are very important. Not only until become bodhisattva, after become bodhisattva, still the practitioner need to practice these three. Right? That means also we need to think, I want to follow the Nagarjuna tradition. First, I must cultivate great compassion, then bodhicitta, then emptiness. Then I'll be a bodhisattva. Then you should not think, oh, after I became a bodhisattva, I no need to practice great compassion, no need to practice bodhicitta, no need to practice the non-dual cognition. Still, I need to practice until I become a Buddha. Right? Therefore, we need to make a proper, plan how to practice the Mahayan path. So, today I thought we should start the new one. Okay, next, presenting the ground of the Arya Bodhisattva. Okay, now everybody have to be very clear. Ordinary beings mean the being who haven't reached to the Arahat state. Everybody refer to the ordinary. In Tibetan we call Sose Hyo. Sose Hyo, ordinary beings. He or she, since reached to the Arahat, then we call, extraordinary being, or beyond the ordinary stage. Then Arya Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva can be ordinary being. Bodhisattva can be Arya. After he or she already became Buddha, then we no name Bodhisattva. We say Buddha. Ordinary being, then Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva can be ordinary being, can be extraordinary being, then Arya, then Buddha. Therefore, sometimes we say, this, for example, Manjushri is, Bodhisattva. Actually, Manjushri is a Buddha, not Bodhisattva. Avalokiteshvara is Buddha, not Bodhisattva. Buddha Shakyamuni is a Buddha, not Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva and Buddha is totally, separate, different meaning. Therefore, just simple ordinary being, no bodhicitta, then generated bodhicitta, still considered ordinary being, until reach to the Arya state, then we call Arya Bodhisattva, then Buddha. Right? Therefore, the third outline has three parts, presenting the 10 ground collectively, 10 ground. Then presenting the individual grounds. Then presenting the quality of the 10 grounds. Let me first explain the 10 grounds together. Then explain the 10 ground, 10 bhumis or 10 bodhicitta individually. Then explain the quality of the 10 bhumis or 10 bodhicitta. Make sure, okay, somebody will say first bhumi. Also we can say first bodhicitta or second bhumi second bodhicitta, third bhumi, third bodhicitta, right? Is a synonymous. Now, presenting the ground of the collectively, the explanation here of the 11 ground, such as the perfect joy, is based on the flowing passage. The precious garland, where broad presentation of the 10 or 11 ground is given. Generally, we can say, there's a 10 bhumi of the Bodhisattva. Not much, explain. We don't have a much explanation about the 11th bhumi, mostly 10. There's a little explanation about the 11 bhumi. Just I'll let you know, according to Mahayana, particularly according to the Nalanda Buddhist tradition, let's say you reach all the way to 10th bhumi, 10th. Have you reached the 10th? Then you can enter into the Vajrayana path. Then it's considered 11th bhumi. Then it's very fast, maybe few months you practice the Vajrayana path, then you will become a Buddha. Therefore, 11th. Generally, most of the Sutraya teaching only present the 10th bhumi, not much 11. So how, there's a question, how Nagarjuna Chandrakirti established the 10 bhumi, which basis? Therefore, just as the 8 Sarvakas grounds are taught in the Sarvaka vehicles, 10 Bodhisattva grounds are found in the great vehicles. Before the Buddha taught the Mahayana teaching, he already explained the general teaching, particularly I think more about the Hinayana path. In the Hinayana tradition, there are 8 bhumi or 8 ground. The later, when Buddha taught the Mahayana path, then there are 10 ground. 10 ground doesn't mean, there's a 8, like a Charvaka ground plus like a 2 plus 2 is become 10. No, it's totally 7. In the Hinayana path, there are 8 grounds. In the Mahayana, there are 10 grounds or 10 bhumi. So which basis Nagarjuna or Chandrakirti established the 10 bhumi? Then here, Chandrakirti also based his presentation of the 10 ground sutra. There's a particular sutra, namely the 10 ground sutra. 10 ground sutra. In Tibetan, we call Dode. Dode means sutra. Dode means sutra. Chu means 10. Sa means ground. Chu means 10. Dode Sa Chupa. That means in Tibetan, Sutra, Bhumi 10. Dode Sa Chupa. In Tibetan, go this way. Sutra, Bhumi 10. So based on this sutra, then Nagarjuna, everything they study for quite a long time, then they, extract the meaning from the 10 ground sutra and clearly present in the enter into middle way. Then here, the characterization of the 10 ground, such as perfect joy, as the 10 awakening mind. 10 ground or 10 awakening mind or 10 bodhicitta, right? So first ground, first bhumi, first bodhicitta, right? Now I thought we should, what is now, oh, at 28. So, 10 awakening mind. Then remember, bodhicitta, there are two, conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. The conventional bodhicitta is the same from the, the accumulation paths all the way to Buddhahood. There's no much differences between, first, the conventional bodhicitta is the exactly same who possess the conventional bodhicitta, the practitioner who reach to the accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation. The conventional bodhicitta is exactly same. Always wish to be Buddha, to benefit all sentient beings, right? That means there's a two kind of thoughts. One, wish to benefit all sentient beings, one thought. Therefore, I want to achieve Buddhahood. So, the bodhicitta is same from beginning, in the middle, and the end. When you compare the ultimate bodhicitta from the first bhumi, during the second bhumi, third bhumi, that ultimate bodhicitta, have a bit different based on certain qualities. Therefore, here must be the 10 awakening mind, or the 10 ultimate bodhicitta must be understood in terms of the ultimate awakening mind, right? So, ultimate bodhicitta. The commentary characterizes the nature of the 10 grown as the ultimate awakening mind in the following. So now again from the commentary, from the Chattakritti, when the uncontaminated gnosis, this is the first time I saw, they use the gnosis, actually G-N-O-S-I-S, G-N-O-S-I-S, right? So this is first time I saw, used by Thubten Jimba. This means when the uncontaminated gnosis, wisdom, okay, wisdom. When the uncontaminated gnosis of the bodhisattvas, which is sustained by compassion and so on, then second, it is divided in terms of the 10 facet, F-A-C-E-T-S, 10 facet. It is acquiring the mean name grown, for it constitutes the locus of the quality. The word uncontaminated gnosis is very important. We need to know, we need to study what does mean uncontaminated. Then this meaning, made more bit clearly by Thubten Jimba, because it's difficult to understand. Then he said, in the above, the grown, uncontaminated gnosis is explained through the 4 factors. Its nature, what sustains is thoroughly, how is acquires the name, and the etymology of the ground. That means the 4 factors. First, the nature of the ground. Second, what sustain is thoroughly. 3, how is acquiring the name grounds. 4, the etymology of his name. 4 factors, right? Now here, The first line in the commentary says, the uncontaminated gnosis, means uncontaminated wisdom of the Bodhisattva, which is sustained by compassion and so on. It's mean uncontaminated gnosis or uncontaminated wisdom divided in terms of the facet, in terms of the unique characteristic. Right? Therefore, some explain the nature of uncontaminated gnosis using the definition found in treasury of the Abhidharma. So, somebody explained the meaning of uncontaminated gnosis, uncontaminated wisdom, according to the treasure of Abhidharma, according to Abhidharma treatise. And I think in Tibet, that time in the Tibet, somebody define the meaning of uncontaminated wisdom, uncontaminated gnosis, based on the Abhidharma treatise. In terms of, so according to Abhidharma treatise, what's the mean uncontaminated wisdom? In terms of not suitable for enhancing contamination, according to Abhidharma, contaminated or uncontaminated meaning suitable for enhancing, contamination. Mean, for example, conditioned phenomena. For example, flower. When we look at flower, the flower cause to enhance our attachment. When we look at the fruits, they cause to enhancing our attachment. When we look at our, enemy, when we look at the ugly object, the enemy, ugly object cause to enhancing the, here they say, contamination, mean afflictive emotion. Right? So according to Abhidharma, contaminated or uncontaminated means the things cause to increase affliction, affliction or afflictive emotion. This means contaminated phenomena. The phenomena which is not causing, increasing the afflictive emotion, means the thing is uncontaminated. Is that according to the Abhidharma treatise. So somebody define the meaning, uncontaminated gnosis according based on the Abhidharma treatise. Clear? Then here what Lama Tsongkhapa said, this suggests is lack of understanding of the unique meaning of what is meant to be uncontaminated according to this system of Chandrakirti. Right? This master defined the meaning of uncontaminated based on the Abhidharma treatise. Mean this person is lack of understanding of the unique meaning of what is meant to be uncontaminated according to this system, according to Pasangika, according to Chandrakirti, according to Nagarjuna. Right? Therefore, our own position is this. What is contaminated is. Right? So I thought I should finish this one. I don't think I can finish. So next class, if you have the book or soft copy or hard copy, please read page number 64, 66, particularly page number 66. It's very important to know what does mean contaminated, uncontaminated, the meaning the definition according to Pasangika school, right? School. Therefore, page number 64 and 65. Then there are 10 bhumis, 10 grounds, 10 bodhicitta. How we can differentiate first bhumi and second bhumi to third to how we can differentiate? Then we have to study the 4 points or 4 features. Therefore, page number 66. Then next Saturday, then we will start the first ground. After we finish the page number 64, 65, and 66, then we will start actually the first ground, the perfect joy. Okay? Okay, we have 20 minutes. Is there any question or I need to clarify anything? If not, then we can go, a little bit about the contaminated and uncontaminated. Okay, that means please make sure you will, you must, if you have the, the books, the physical book or soft copy, you must read the page number 64, 65, 63. Now let's study, the contaminated and uncontaminated. According to the Abhidharma treatise, is here, I already explained. Treasury of Abhidharma in terms of not stable, very stable for enhancing the contamination, right? In Tibetan we call zakche, contamination, zakche, or contamination, affliction, or negative thoughts are, kind of synonymous. Negative thoughts, afflictions, contamination. Contamination is, linked with the contaminated, right? Zakche, Tibetan zakche. Therefore, in terms of not stable for enhancing contamination is the uncontaminated. The opposite, stable, right? Stable for enhancing contamination is the contaminated. Then not stable for enhancing contamination is the uncontaminated. Clear? First, in terms of not, suitable or, cause for enhancing contamination is the uncontaminated phenomena. In terms of suitable for enhancing contamination is the contaminated phenomena, according to Abhidharma treatise, according to Abhidharma tradition. Right? This is point of view from one of the master. Here, Lama Tsongkhapa simply said, this suggests a lack of understanding of the unique meaning of what is meant to be uncontaminated according to this system or according to Chandrakirti. Then our own position is this, our own position or, according to the Pasangika position is this. Is this. What is the contaminated is tainted, right? Contaminated, tainted either, there's a two option, either by ignorance, grasping at the two existent, or by the imprints of such as ignorance. again, what is contaminated is tainted either by ignorance, grasping, or tainted by imprints of such as ignorance. Mean the mind, we can say, polluted or tainted. Polluted or tainted. The mind is tainted or polluted by the ignorance, grasping, or the imprints of the ignorance. Mean, for example, when you look at the phenomena, when the phenomena perceived for us as an independent phenomena, that we have a mind which perceives the thing as an independent. That time our mind is, tainted or polluted by either by ignorance or the imprints of the ignorance. Either, right? Once more, what is contaminated is tainted either by ignorance, grasping, or by the imprints of the such as ignorance. The gnosis, or the gnosis means the wisdom, free of such as taint is uncontaminated. That means the wisdom, particularly talking about the wisdom which realizes emptiness. The wisdom, the gnosis, free such as taint is uncontaminated. That means the wisdom mind, free such as the taint is uncontaminated. And the wisdom or the mind not free of such as tainted is contaminated. So you can, listen the records one more. You can, you can listen again the record. Ignorance. This is as, studied in the Chandrakirti's clear voice, clear words. Now I will start it, the quotation from the commentary. From the perspective of the nature, that is the object of uncontaminated gnosis, free of obscuration, cataract of the ignorance. Very difficult as the meaning, right? Cataract. For example, we have an eyes problem. When we look at things, things appear differently. Next is become more clear. Until the attainment of the Buddha's grown. Until the attainment of the Buddha's grown. The only mental state, only the mental state not tainted by imprints of ignorance is conceptualization, gnosis of an Arya in meditative equipoise. Right? That means before we become Buddha, all the minds we have, compassion, attachment, anger, patience, whatever, all the mind is tainted, polluted, tainted, influenced by imprints of ignorance, except the non-conceptual gnosis of an Arya meditative equipoise. That means when the Arya or Hinayan Arya, Mahayan Arya doesn't matter, when the Arya fully meditate on emptiness, absorb on emptiness, only the wisdom is free from the contamination, free from the tainted, free from the imprints of ignorance. Otherwise, rest of the mind is totally tainted by imprints of ignorance, except, before become Buddha, except the wisdom which is fully meditated on emptiness. Mean, before we become Buddha, there's only one mind which is free from the, the tainted, which is free from the imprints of the ignorance. Only one mind, which is the wisdom, which is meditated on emptiness. The rest of the mind is totally contaminated. Again, one more. Until the attainment of the Buddha's grown, the only mental state not tainted by imprints of ignorance is non-conceptual gnosis of an Arya in meditative equipoise. Such as gnosis come about only intermittently, right? That means otherwise, when Arya meditate on emptiness, the mind is free from the imprints of the ignorance. When they arise from meditation, and the mind is again polluted or tainted by imprints of the ignorance. Right? So it's not easy. So you read few times, then you will understand. Okay, this means it's now 4:48. We can stop the class here. So please read page number 64 and 66. Then next we will start the fast groan, which is the, like a joy, great joy. Also, it's up to you. I really wish all of you, like once a day or morning, evening, afternoon, you just read the first chapter slowly. You just hold your hand, visualize, like Manjushri, visualize Nagarjuna or Chandrakirti. If you cannot, you just visualize Buddha Shakyamuni. You recite the first chapter from beginning to the end. Then when you recite the first stanza, right, you just do strong reflection, how Charvaka or Pratikya Buddha, eras from Buddha, what does it mean? Then Buddhas are born from Bodhisattvas. Then Bodhisattvas born from the three principles. First you think that. Second, so you are the Mahayana, practitioner. So how I should practice the path? How should I become a Buddha? First, practice compassion. Then a beginning mind. Then emptiness. So far we don't have the wisdom which is really emptiness, but we have compassion, right? You generate the pure and great compassion. Focus or, observe all sentient beings and do short meditation on compassion. Then cultivate bodhicitta. After, fully, cultivated great compassion, bodhicitta, then you just simply, you just imagine, you just think the things around us is there. But those are not there as an independent. Everything is empty of inherent existence. Then you do short meditation on emptiness. Then move second, stanza. Then third, then you can remember the sixth analogy and think about how, reflect on yourself, how I am in samsara because of these 6 factors. So when you reflect on the 6 factors, then you really have a strong aspiration. You yourself want to free from the suffering. Then second, you just reflect on others. Then you think, oh, all sentient beings are in samsara exactly like me. cycle through the 6 factors, then generate great compassion, right? Then in between, then you can, reflect what we discussed for last few classes. Okay? So thank you so much for attending the Saturday class. I hope, you're going to understand a little bit. I know you're not going to understand everything, but bit by bit, for the 1 year accumulation, you will have a, lot of good knowledge about the Pasangika school, how to practice the path. At the end, we do dedication for realizing emptiness, for free all sentient being from suffering. If we only practice wisdom which realizes emptiness, we cannot achieve Buddhahood. Second, we need to practice the wisdom with the bodhicitta. Please dedicate the merit for able to practice the union of bodhicitta and the wisdom for becoming Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Last, we dedicate all the merits we have accumulated in the past, present, in the future for world peace. I don't know how much you are, really watching news. Now the whole world is very unstable. There's a lot of kind of dangers for the world. So please, every day you can dedicate for world peace. Okay, thank you. Have a happy Saturday.